Good day, everyone. It's a beautiful day here in the Northeast. Really beautiful and clear. We've had some extremely cold weather here. I hope you're safe and warm and cozy wherever you are. Across this zany, wacky world, man, it's a zacky, wacky place. Anyway, I wanted to do something different today and just kind of riff, just do a stream of consciousness riff / rant about melancholy music. For some reason, certain melancholic songs have a bigger impact on me and on my being and my soul than happy music. That might be true for you as well. But I think in particular, Dottie Clark's too loud. As I was saying, I think to Henry Mancini and Johnny Mercer's The Days of Wine and Roses, the original version taken from the soundtrack of the movie, a song that's been covered almost as many times as Paul McCartney's Yesterday. But the soundtrack version has the Henry Mancini chorus, which I've also heard to refer to as the Johnny Mercer voices, his crack LA orchestra, and of course Henry Mancini. And it has these beautiful undulating strings, and it opens with a French horn, sort of going, so it kind of just slowly envelops the listener, and then the strings take over and sort of wash over you. And it's a really sad song. If you haven't seen the Days of Wine and Roses with Jack Lemmon and the astounding Lee Remick, it's a really sad, tragic, at times funny movie, I think from the late 50s, early 60s, about alcoholism. In the late 50s in America, there were many what I think of as social dramas. There were also many movies that tried to tell you that your wife was crazy if she wanted a job. I think of Susan Hayward in I Want to Live, with the great, I think a soundtrack by Gary Mulligan. But there were many songs saying if your wife wanted to have her own money and her own job and didn't want to stay home and cook all day, that you were doomed and she was nuts. Because that's sort of what my dad thought, 'cause my mother always had a job. Strange side story, my mother worked at Pontiac General Hospital in Detroit, where I was born, where everybody's favorite doctor was Dr. Jack Kevorkian, who eventually became known as a suicide doctor. She said he was the nicest of all the doctors. But I digress. That song is so amazing. When I hear it, it's kind of, I can't move really. And I'm reviewing this turntable, the VPI Avenger Direct, which is the greatest turntable I've ever had in my apartment. It is just an unbelievable turntable. If you ever see VPI turntables at a show, Matt Weisfeld, Harry Weisfeld, they kind of put on a show. They're kind of like circus barkers. And Harry does the thing where he puts a finger on the turntable platter and it doesn't move. But that turntable, you can hit it with a frickin' hammer and you'll hear nothing come through the speakers. That turntable is so dead quiet. It's dead quiet, but also is full of life. My Kuzma is also very, very dead quiet, but it lacks a little bit of life. So the VPI, I digress again, is a combination of a turntable like a Riga that has tons of life and energy and a heavier turntable. Anyway, I'm listening to that song on the VPI. I put the needle down. I wrote about this in my review in Stereophile. And I turned around to walk back to my chair, and the sound was so amazing. It came up on my back and down over my chest. I had to literally grab onto something because I was in such shock at the sound of the song, which I've heard a million times. It's from the Henry Mancini, Our Man in LA or something. I forgot. It's him sitting on the cover. And the song was so astounding. And that song just really touches my heart, as does Miles Davis's Blue and Green, or Miles Davis and Bill Evans' Blue and Green, which is one of the saddest songs I've ever heard. Just the fragility of the song, the beauty of Bill Evans' piano playing. It's just, wow, it's a dark, deep, enigmatic song in a way. And that kind of got me thinking about all the other songs in that sort of canon that I love. Wayne Shorter's Night Dreamer, the album, has a similar effect on me. I have to kind of be in the right mood and sitting down and ready to listen to that record because it's such an astounding performance. Wayne Shorter's compositions on all his Blue Note records are amazing. His last record's pretty great too. I forgot what it's called. I Am Nobody? I forgot. But that, in particular, Night Dreamer is so, the songs are fragile, they're intense, they're incredibly dynamic. Someone once said that all of Wayne Shorter's songs sort of ask questions, and they're unanswered questions, they're open. and those melodies really pull me in, and they're very dark. And Elvin Jones is playing on most of those records, and he's just quaking. He's Titanic. Joe Chambers is on a couple of them, but Juju, Night Dreamer, Speak No Evil, Adam's Apple, Schizophrenia is another masterpiece. But there's an internal core of Wayne Shorter's music that just is kind of tragic to me. I don't know what it is exactly. It's hard to really define, but there's a heaviousness there. There's a playfulness as well. Some of the things he did with Art Blakey, like I believe they did Ping Pong, can be kind of playful. But to me, they're deep waters. All those tunes, Blue and Green, The Days of Wine and Roses. The Days of Wine and Roses reflects what happens in the movie. Jack Lemmon and Lee Remick are like happening hip office people in the 60s in New York City, and they both become alcoholics, and Jack Lemmon pulls himself out, but Lee Remick can't. She'd rather have the bottle than Jack in a normal life. And it may be a little heavy-handed by today's standards, but it's such a tragic movie. And that song, The Days of Wine and Roses, which Sinatra did a great cover, as did Tony Bennett. It's tragic, but it's also very, very beautiful. So I just started thinking about all those different songs that have had that effect on me on all these different records. And I think about Rickie Lee Jones. She has a couple songs. Last Chance Texaco, which is an incredible song. It's beautiful. It's Steve Gadd on drums and all those incredible LA Cats. That album, the Rickie Lee Jones first album, it's a little masterpiece, as is Pirates. I think that's the follow-up. At first people thought it was a Joni Mitchell clone, but she's no clone of anybody. She's definitely kind of in that beatnik vibe. But that song, We Belong Together, is another one. They're very sensitive, heartfelt songs, and that's part of the reason they've always touched me. And then I take it out from there, and I think of Derek and the Dominoes, I Am Yours, which is an acoustic song with tabla. It's just very soulful and heartfelt. And I'm sure you have songs like this that affect you in the same way, or even Beatles songs, In My Life, Yesterday. And, it can go over into ballad material and schmaltz material, but, listen to Johnny Hartman and John Coltrane. Remember John Coltrane? On their amazing duo album, or even Coltrane's Lush Life album, you get that same sense of loss and soulfulness. And then we get into people like, Donny Hathaway, who was just an amazing, soulful singer who brought so much. Minnie Riperton did music like this. I think of Nick Drake, Riverman. Oh my God, what an incredible song. That, Riverman was in 5/4, the way he did it, and beautiful. He was a wonderful guitar player, but a very sad song. I think the song's about suicide. I'm going to go to the Riverman, jump in the river, I guess. I think other people might have other ideas of what that song is about. But Nick Drake also had very upbeat songs. But Riverman is probably my favorite, because it's just, man, it's like that song takes you out into the cosmos somewhere. You're just kind of up in the stars with him until the song is over. And several people have done covers of that song. There's an Andy Bay cover that's pretty cool. And then if I get back to jazz singers, I think about, Carmen McRae. Good Lord, what an astounding artist she was. She made so many records. I found one just yesterday at Academy Records on Temp Sonic Records with Lou Belson on drums and Benny Carter's on the record, and it's just and it's all sort of sad and melancholic. There's a well-known, it's not that well-known, Tyshawn Sorey is a composer, an incredible drummer, an incredible genius. He took over Anthony Braxton's chair at Wesleyan, then he's at an even better gig now. But when I interviewed him, this is what I think of as a polymath, this fellow. His music is very cinematic, very, Dottie's over, hold on. I'd never heard of this woman, Dottie Clark, but this is on Mainstream. And Mainstream Records, early, mid 1970s jazz out of New York City. Don't let anyone tell you that jazz died in the 70s. There were still tons of great jazz being made. A lot of it had more of a funky allure. I did a video about that a while ago, but I'd never heard of this woman, Dottie Clark. But what a band. Vinnie Bell, Bill Stryker on guitar, Gary Chester, Herbie Lavelle on drums, George DeVivier on bass. And she sounds a little bit like Carmen McRae. But there are so many wonderful singers who are just sort of lost to the ages. I was over at my buddy Alex Halberstadt's house last week, a wonderful writer for the New York Times and the New Yorker. And of course, he does the magazine, edits the magazine for MoMA. He writes for Audiophile. And I'm trying to get him to dig Edie Gorme. And he's like, man, you're just off your rocker. You were into Edie Gorme. But Edie Gorme, man, she had so much power and so much soul. She could sing anything. Her voice was easily as big, creamier than Barbra Streisand's. I was listening to her album on Columbia, where she does Guess Who I Saw Today, which is another very melancholic song. Don't Go to Strangers. The original Don't Go to Strangers was done by Etta Jones, which is a classic, was a hit. What a beautiful song. And the way Edie sings it, it's so languorous, and it just sort of rolls and hovers in the air. Edie Gorme had a hit duo with her buddy Steve Lawrence, her husband rather. I guess they were buddies. But Edie on her own is just, man, that voice was just astounding. And, her records were on the Columbia, were cut at 30th Street in New York. So you get that giant hall sound. And I'll close with one of my favorite albums of Melancholia, Miles Davis's Miles Ahead. It's part of the triptych with Gil Evans, along with Sketches of Spain and Porgy and Bess, I believe. But Miles Ahead, just it's a sweet, the songs roll one into the other. I told the story before. When I was a kid, I'd stay up late, like till 2 a.m. in the morning, and watch the Late Show. And back then it had this song, I didn't know what it was, but it just entranced me. And that was My Ship off Miles Ahead. It's almost, you almost hear more of 30th Street than you do the musicians. But that album is just, it's intoxicating. It's beautiful. It's fragile in a way. Miles sounds like he's far away on a mountaintop playing, but the songs are so gorgeous. Anyway, that's today's riff or rant on melancholic music. Thanks a lot. Have a great bouncy day wherever you are.